Here near Romeca and State, you can see that police have taped off a portion of the area. Right now, detectives are surrounding a white sedan that appears to be connected to this incident. Chicago police saying that early this morning around 9:30 there was a fight between two women. That scene unfolding here near State and Romeca. One of the women allegedly pulled out a gun and shot the other woman in the face. The 31-year-old victim was taken to the hospital and later died. Now, the suspect has been taken into custody, and Chicago police say this is still a very ongoing investigation. So once again, this taking place here near Romeca in State is still very active as we speak, and we'll get you more information as soon as we get that. But for now, we're live in the South Loop. Lisette Nunez, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
The truth did not arrive with urgency. It arrived quietly, buried inside a legal motion most people would never read. A document that challenged something already decided in the public mind. Not murder. No fist bump. Those words feel almost harmless when spoken aloud. But in the context of this case, they threaten to unravel an entire narrative built on certainty rather than scrutiny. The Romeca Meeks case had already been emotionally closed for many observers. A video circulated. A moment froze in time. And from that single fragment, meaning was assigned, motive was presumed, and guilt felt obvious. The story moved faster than understanding ever could. But what happens when the foundation of that certainty is unstable? Attorney Holly Johnson's newly filed motion does not deny tragedy. It does not minimize loss. Instead, it does something far more uncomfortable. It asks whether what people thought they saw was ever truly understood at all. Human beings are pattern-seeking by nature. When violence erupts, the mind rushes to impose order. A gesture becomes symbolic. A pause becomes suspicious. A reaction becomes a confession. And once a narrative feels emotionally complete, questioning it begins to feel unnecessary or even threatening. The alleged fist bump became a turning point. A single motion interpreted as celebration, arrogance, or pride. But interpretation is not evidence. And when emotion replaces analysis, perception can quietly become the most powerful and dangerous witness in the room. This case now forces a pause, a rewind not of footage, but of belief. Because if that gesture was misunderstood, then the meaning attached to it may reveal more about collective assumptions than individual intent. On this channel, we examine cases where certainty arrives too quickly and motives hide beneath the surface. If you're drawn to stories where truth is buried under perception, consider subscribing to Buried Motives: True Crime. Because sometimes, the most important question is what happened, but why we were so sure we already knew. Once a narrative takes hold, it begins to rewrite memory itself. Facts are no longer evaluated on their own merit. They are filtered, shaped, and weighed according to the story already chosen. In the Romeca Meeks case, that process happened quickly and largely outside the courtroom. The public did not wait for motive to be proven.
And the cops did, at least they did, did their job, and they did, what they had to do, because, it wasn't for them, she wouldn't be like in handcuffs right now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. How was Holly's response to you all when you guys were saying arrest her? What was her? Did she look at you guys?
What's it called? She called me a snitch, and then I said, I don't care, I'm gonna sign complaints. And then what's it called? She was frustrated, and she was saying, she was like, I have a concealed and carry, and I was like, I don't give a fuck. You shot somebody, you know what I mean? And the other girl was like, yeah, the gun's in the car. And I was like, bro, I've been said the gun's in the car. It's in the passenger side. You guys just that she was just dropping off her kid, like, what's going on, And so to me it looked like like it looked weird. You know what I mean? Because I was telling the police that she had her baby inside her car. So I was like, that's her baby. The baby's in the car. I was like, you need to arrest her. Like, why aren't you guys arresting her? And then she was all like, oh, and by the way, I don't know if anybody caught the video or anything, but Carlos goes up to Holly and fist bumps her and says,
What?
yeah, it was what was it? It was self-defense, right? It was self-defense. And she's like, yeah, it was self-defense.
Not fish bump. That's disgusting.
It inferred motive from behavior, and behavior, when viewed without context, is dangerously easy to misunderstand. Psychologists describe something known as attribution error, the tendency to assign intent to actions without considering situational pressure. Under stress, the human body behaves unpredictably. Movements become reflexive. Gestures lose their meaning. Yet when observers are already primed to see guilt, every motion appears deliberate. The motion filed by Holly Johnson quietly recenters the question of intent, not outcome, not emotion, intent. And that distinction matters more than most people realize, because murder is not defined by tragedy alone. It is defined by the mental state behind the act. What the public believed was confidence may have been shock. What was labeled arrogance may have been dissociation. What appeared celebratory may have been nothing more than the body reacting to overwhelming stress. But once an image is repeated enough times, it becomes symbolic, and symbols are powerful. They replace complexity with certainty. They make questioning feel unnecessary. What's striking is how little attention was given to what wasn't present. No documented escalation. No clear psychological trail pointing toward premeditated harm. No established
Came out in court today for the hearing of Quadasia Johnson, including the fact that this was the first time when the shooting unfolded that she allegedly laid eyes on Romeca Blackman. We know that she and Romeca Blackman, they both have children by the same man. And for the very first time, we are hearing from Carlos Smith. He was the man on the scene when this tragic shooting unfolded. So a lot of information came out in court today. Witnesses saying what they saw, but you were there. What's your reaction to what you heard came out in court today?
When I heard it, I'm just looking, it was unbelievable, but I was there. And I know for a fact none of that happened, how they just explained it. But my truth will get out here, and I hope everybody understand. That's really it. I can't even say too much right now. Because it's just gonna feel like I'm going against them, they going against me, we just going back and forth. But the truth is gonna come out.
Pattern of intent unfolding over time. Instead, the case leaned heavily on interpretation, on how something looked rather than what it meant. This is where danger hides in plain sight. When perception becomes proof, justice begins to drift. And when the public rewards certainty over curiosity, nuance becomes the first casualty. If you've ever wondered how quickly a story can harden into belief, this case offers a chilling answer. And if you're drawn to examining how human behavior is misread under pressure, subscribing to Buried Motives True Crime ensures you don't miss what others overlook. Because the most unsettling motives shown here may not belong to the accused, but to the way we decide who they are. Investigations are meant to search for truth, but they are conducted by human beings, and human beings do not operate in a vacuum. Once a prevailing theory takes shape, every decision that follows risks being pulled toward it. In the Romeca Meeks case, the early framing of events mattered more than most people realized. When investigators approach a scene with an expectation, subtle shifts occur. Questions are asked differently. Details are prioritized selectively. Ambiguities are quietly set aside. Over time, the investigation begins to confirm what it already believes. This is not always intentional. In fact, it is often invisible to those involved. Behavioral scientists call it tunnel vision, a narrowing of focus that occurs when certainty feels safer than doubt. And in cases involving violence, the pressure to deliver answers quickly can outweigh the need to examine alternatives thoroughly. Holly Johnson's motion highlights this risk by pointing to what may have been overlooked rather than what was exaggerated.
How did she just walk away? How? When they told you that he had her in the headlock, How did he even walk away? Why did they was so easy to walk away? They tell me, look at the video, they bumping fences. I don't know about any of that because I really can't even focus.
Court records show the shooter had filed multiple protective orders against Blackman starting last December and as recently as this summer. The family believes she was trying to build a paper trail.
That's a game that was played and it was premeditated.
The shooter was taken into custody but later released. Blackman's family says she was unarmed. Witness video also shows Blackman's white car stopped in the street, but it's unclear how she got out. They insist there was no reason to shoot her. Blackman worked 2 jobs and was studying to become a registered nurse. Her school awarded her mom a pin posthumously.
You had an opportunity to walk away, to call the police, to turn around and get in your car and drive off. You did none of the above.
The Cook County State's Attorney
to what may have been overlooked rather than what was exaggerated. Context that could soften interpretation. Psychological factors that complicate intent. The absence of clear markers typically associated with deliberate harm. These are not dramatic revelations. They are subtle ones, and subtlety is often ignored in favor of something more definitive. What happens when an investigation stops asking why and settles for what it appears to be? The public rarely sees these internal shifts. What they see is the result, a narrative that feels cohesive, even when pieces don't quite align. And once that narrative reaches the public sphere, it hardens. Doubt begins to look like denial. Re-examination feels like betrayal. This is why cases like this matter beyond the courtroom. They reveal how easily intent can be assigned, and how quickly complexity is replaced with certainty. If you're drawn to cases where the real story lives beneath the official one, subscribe to Buried Motives True Crime. This channel exists to examine the quiet details, the overlooked psychology, and the motives that were always there, but rarely questioned. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moment in an investigation isn't the crime itself. It's the moment curiosity disappears. Here we go. Once a case leaves the walls of an investigation and enters the public arena, it changes shape. Facts no longer stand alone. They are filtered through headlines, social media clips, and repeated interpretations that grow louder with each retelling. In the Romeca Meeks case, perception did not simply follow the investigation, it began to steer it. Public attention creates pressure. Pressure accelerates conclusions. And when a narrative feels emotionally satisfying, it becomes resistant to challenge. Any attempt to slow the story down is met with suspicion, as though questioning certainty is the same as excusing harm. Media coverage often favors moments over meaning. A single frame can outweigh months of context. A gesture can eclipse an entire psychological profile. The alleged fist bump became a symbol precisely because it was simple. It required no explanation, no patience, no discomfort. It offered instant moral clarity in a situation that was anything but clear. But simplicity is not truth, it is convenience. What rarely gets discussed is how repeated exposure alters belief. When viewers see the same moment replayed again and again, it stops being questioned. The brain accepts it as settled fact. Over time, interpretation hardens into memory, and memory begins to feel like evidence. Holly Johnson's motion quietly disrupts this cycle. It asks whether the case has been shaped by repetition rather than reflection, whether the emotional reaction to a single image outweighed the responsibility to examine the full psychological landscape behind the event. This is where buried motives become most dangerous. Not because they are hidden by malice, but because they are buried under certainty. When society decides it already understands a case, curiosity becomes unnecessary. And justice, which depends on careful doubt, begins to erode. Ask yourself this: if the public had never seen that video, would the case feel as resolved? Or did the story solidify because it was easier to believe than to question? If you're drawn to cases where public certainty collides with uncomfortable complexity, subscribe to Buried Motives True Crime. This channel exists to challenge the stories that feel finished, but may be anything but. Because sometimes, the loudest voice in the room isn't truth. It's repetition. The phrase "not murder" unsettles people because it disrupts moral certainty. It feels like a contradiction, almost an erasure of harm. But legally and psychologically, it is something else entirely. It is a question of intent. And intent is where this case becomes most fragile. Murder is not defined solely by consequence. It requires a mental state that precedes the act: awareness, decision, purpose. Without that internal architecture, the label begins to collapse. This is the fault line Holly Johnson's motion presses against, not loudly but persistently. What the public often overlooks is how difficult intent is to prove when it does not announce itself. True malicious intent leaves traces, patterns of escalation, rehearsal of harm, verbal or behavioral warning signs that grow sharper over time. In many cases, those signs are disturbingly clear in hindsight. But here, the record appears quieter. The absence of clear psychological buildup forces an uncomfortable pause. If intent cannot be demonstrated beyond interpretation, then certainty becomes assumption. And assumption, no matter how emotionally compelling, is not proof. This is where emotion and law diverge. Tragedy invites outrage. Outrage demands answers, but justice requires restraint, the willingness to tolerate uncertainty long enough to examine it honestly. The Romeca Meeks case challenges whether that restraint ever existed, or whether the outcome was mentally decided before the deeper psychological questions were even asked. Ask yourself this: how often do we equate shock with intention? How quickly do we label confusion as cruelty? And when the result is devastating, do we stop caring how it came to be? If you're drawn to cases where legal truth clashes with emotional certainty, subscribe to Buried Motives True Crime. This channel is dedicated to exploring the space between what feels obvious and what can actually be proven. Because sometimes, the most disturbing realization isn't that harm occurred. It's that we may never have understood the mind behind it at all.
Hospital where she died.
I ask that you give us strength! Give us strength, Father, for every one of us, because we're gonna need it in this moment.
Hundreds of pink, white, and silver balloons sit outside of Inglewood STEM High School. Her mother said she was a kind, loving, and sweet mother. Now she's left with raising her grandson.
I need y'all to pray for my baby.
Yeah, we will. We got him.
He's sitting. He has shut down. He don't want to be around nobody.
Chicago police say the person taken into custody after the fatal shooting has been released without charges. Her family is eagerly seeking justice. Romeca, also known as Big Meeks, was soon released among thousands of other balloons. Reporting in Inglewood, Sade Gray, CBS News, Chicago.